The sense of hearing. Hearing is a special sense. Hearing is important for language, communication, and localization of unknown sound sources. Objectives. At the end of the lecture, a student should be able to understand the functional anatomy of ear, various parts of the ear like external ear, middle ear, internal ear, and their functions. Important aspects regarding physiology of hearing like properties of sound waves, conduction and transduction of sound energy in the human ear, neural transmission and central processing of neural impulse, and finally applied aspect about the sense of hearing. In this first part of the lecture, I am going to teach you about the functional anatomy of ear, various parts of the ear and their functions. For hearing, the sound waves they have to pass through the three subdivisions of the ear, which are external ear, middle ear, and internal ear. External ear, it is the outermost part, which includes pinna and external auditory canal. It extends from auricle up to tympanic membrane. Middle ear is the rectangular cavity which extends from the tympanic membrane up to inner ear. Inner ear is the innermost part for the hearing, which includes vestibulocochlear apparatus, which contains receptors for the transduction of the sound energy into the neural impulses, which are carried by the eighth cranial nerve, vestibulocochlear nerve. So, for the hearing sound, it must pass from the external ear, then middle ear, and finally transduction occurs in the inner ear. External ear consists of pinna and external auditory canal. Pinna or auricle. It consists of single convoluted plate of elastic cartilage which is covered by skin. The function of the pinna is it collects and reflects sound waves into external auditory canal, and it is helpful to localize source of sound. Either the source of the sounds they are in front or behind. In some lower animals, pinna can be moved in the direction of the sound waves. External auditory canal. External one third is the cartilaginous portion. Internal two third is the bony portion. Main function is the secretion of the wax and oil which prevents growth of the bacteria in the external auditory canal. External auditory canal it prevents damage to the tympanic membrane from the foreign body, insects and pointed objects. Middle ear is six-sided air-filled rectangular space in the petrous part of the temporal bone. It contains roof, floor, lateral wall, medial wall, anterior and posterior walls. In this figure we can see the lateral wall which is formed by the tympanic membrane. Medial wall we can see two opening oval window and round window. Roof it separates middle ear cavity from middle cranial fossa, and on the floor it is separated from a thin plate of the bone with a jugular bulb. Lateral wall is formed by tympanic membrane. Tympanic membrane is a curved membrane with a convexity directed towards the middle ear cavity and concavity directed towards the external auditory meatus. In the central part of the tympanic membrane, there is attachment to the handle of malleus and tip of malleus, which produces point of maximum convexity in the central part, which is known as umbo. Walls of middle ear and structures related to them. Here in this both the figure we can see the simplified structure of the rectangular middle ear cavity. Tympanic membrane is present in the lateral wall of the middle ear cavity. This is the medial wall of the middle ear cavity which shows two opening oval window and round window. Oval window is closed by footplate of stapes and round window is closed by secondary tympanic membrane. In the anterior wall, we can see two openings. One is for the tensor tympani muscle and other is the pharyngotympanic tube. The pharyngotympanic tube is also known as eustachian tube, and through eustachian tube middle ear cavity it communicates with the pharynx. This is the posterior wall. Here also in this figure this is the posterior wall. In the posterior wall through editors, middle ear cavity communicates with the mastoid processes and pyramid-like structure. It provides attachment to the stapedius muscle. In the roof, a thin plate of the bone, tegmen tympani, which separates the middle ear cavity from the middle cranial fossa, and in the floor, middle ear cavity, it is separated from the jugular bulb and the carotid artery. Communications of middle ear cavity through the eustachian tube. Middle ear cavity communicates with the pharynx anteriorly. It equalizes pressure in the middle ear cavity. It opens during chewing and swallowing movements. In diseases like sore throat and congestion of pharynx, it can close opening of the eustachian tube in the pharynx, which can decrease the pressure in the middle ear cavity. That's why discomfort in ear is commonly seen in patients with sore throat. In the posterior wall, middle ear cavity communicates with the mastoid air cells. Structures present inside the middle ear cavity. There are three ear ossicles and two muscles. Three ear ossicles present in the middle ear cavity. They are malleus, incus, and stapes. Malleus. The appearance of the malleus is like a hammer. It contains head, handle, and tip. Handle and tip of the malleus they are attached with the tympanic membrane. Head of the malleus it is attached with the second ear ossicle, that is incus. Appearance of the incus is like anvil of the blacksmith, with which blacksmith usually forges his various instruments. Incus contains body, short process, and long process, and with the lenticular process it articulates with the stapes. Appearance of the stapes is like stirrup. Stirrup is support for horse rider's foot. Stapes contains head, anterior and posterior crus, and foot plate of the stapes. This foot plate of the stapes is attached to the oval window. Muscles present in middle ear cavity. They are tensor tympani and stapedius. Tensor tympani muscle it is attached to the neck of malleus and it is innervated by trigeminal nerve. Stapedius muscle it is attached to the neck of stapes and it is innervated by facial nerve. Contraction of the tensor tympani muscle increases tension on the tympanic membrane, and contraction of the stapedius muscle it moves foot plate of the stapes away from the oval window. Both these muscles they protect the inner ear from the loud sounds. Inner ear is situated in petrous part of the temporal bone. It consists of two parts, membranous labyrinth and bony labyrinth. Bony labyrinth contains three semicircular canals, vestibule and cochlea. Membranous labyrinth is lodged within bony labyrinth. It is filled with endolymph surrounded by perilymph. It contains vestibular apparatus and cochlear duct. Vestibular apparatus it contains atrial, saccule and semicircular canal. Atrial, saccule and semicircular canal it informs central nervous system about the position of head, and cochlea it is useful for the function of hearing. Structure of cochlea. Cochlea has the snail like structure. It contains 2 and 3 by 4 turns around the central bone, which is known as modulus. Surrounding the modulus, there is a thin plate of the bone, which is known as osseous spiral lamina. This osseous spiral lamina, it divides the cochlea completely and it gives attachment to the basilar membrane. Basilar membrane and rhesus membrane. It divides the cochlea completely in three compartments: scala vestibuli, scala media, and scala tympani. Scala vestibuli and scala tympani, it contains perilymph, and composition of the perilymph is similar to extracellular fluid. Scala media, it contains endolymph, and composition of the endolymph is similar to intracellular fluid, which contains more amount of potassium and less amount of the sodium. Scala vestibuli, it is closed by footplate of the stapes, and scala tympani, it is closed by secondary tympanic membrane at the round window. Scala vestibuli and scala tympani in the cochlea, they contain perilymph and they communicate with each other at the helicotrema. Perilymph in the scala tympani, it is drained by the aqueduct of the cochlea in the subarachnoid spaces. This is the cross section of cochlea. Basilar membrane and rhizinous membrane. It divides the cochlea in three compartments: scala vestibuli, scala media, and scala tympani. This is basilar membrane with the medial attachment to the osseous spiral lamina, and laterally it is attached to the spiral ligament. Rhizinous membrane, on one end it is attached to the limbus, and on the other end it is attached to the upper margin of the stria vascularis. In the cross section, scala media appears triangular with rhizinous membrane, basilar membrane, and this third wall, it is formed by the stria vascularis. Stria vascularis synthesize and secrete endolymph in the scala media. Scala media, it contains sense organ for the hearing, which is known as organ of Corti. This organ of Corti, it contains various receptors for the transduction of the sound energy into the neural impulses. Structure of organ of Corti. Organ of Corti, it is present on the basilar membrane. In the central part of the organ of Corti, it contains pillar cells or rod of Corti. The space between the rods of Corti, it is known as tunnel of Corti, which contains perilymph. Various receptor cells present in the organ of Corti, they are known as hair cells. There are two types of the hair cells. They are present in the organ of Corti. They are the outer hair cell and the inner hair cells. Outer hair cells, they are more in number. About 20,000 outer hair cells, they are present in human ear, and 4,500 inner hair cells, they are present in our ear. Inner hair cells, they send sensory information through the afferent fibers of the cochlear division of the vestibulocochlear nerve, and the outer hair cell, they detect the presence of the sound and they modulate the function of the inner hair cells. Various supporting cells, they are also present in the organ of Corti. They provide support to the various structures present inside the organ of Corti. Inner phalangeal cells, they provide support to the inner hair cells, and dater cells, they provide support to the outer hair cells. Tectorial membrane, it is a thin and stiff membrane which is present on the uppermost part of the organ of Corti. It is made up of glycoprotein. Hair cells, they are the auditory receptors present in the organ of Corti. They have a body and the uppermost part which shows thin finger-like processes. They are known as stereocilium, and the longest process is known as kinocilium. The hair cells, they receive two type of innervation: afferent innervation and efferent innervation. Afferent innervation, through the cochlear division of the eighth cranial nerve, it sends sensory information. These fibers have cell bodies in the spiral ganglion. About 27,000 fibers in first order neurons they are present. So each hair cell it is supplied with more than one fiber. Efferent innervation from superior olivary nucleus via olivocochlear bundle. It descends to join 8 cranial nerve and end around the base of the outer hair cells, and it causes inhibition of the efferent fibers by releasing hyperpolarizing agent, most probably acetylcholine, and in this manner the outer hair cells then can modify the function of the inner hair cells. At the end of the first part, you have learned about the functional anatomy of ear. There are three parts of the human ear: external ear, middle ear, and internal ear. External ear it contains auricle or pinna, and external auditory canal. Tympanic membrane it separates middle ear from the external ear. In the middle ear there are three ossicles: malleus, incus, and stapes. They transmit the sound from the external ear to the internal ear. In the internal ear there are two parts: vestibular apparatus and cochlear apparatus. They are present in the petrous part of the temporal bone. Vestibular apparatus they serve the function of the equilibrium, and cochlear apparatus they are useful for hearing. This is the cross section of the cochlear duct. Upon cross section there are three parts that can be observed in the cochlear duct. They are the scala vestibuli, scala tympani, and the scala media. In the scala media, sense organ of the hearing is present, and it is known as organ of Corti. Organ of Corti it contains receptors that convert the sound energy into the neural impulses. There are two types of the hair cells: inner hair cells and outer hair cells. Inner hair cells these are the receptors, and outer hair cells they detect the presence of sound and they can modify the activity of inner hair cells. Upon stimulation of the inner hair cells, they convert the sound energy into the neural impulses, which is carried by the cochlear division of the vestibulocochlear nerve. In the next lecture, I am going to teach you about the physiology of hearing. Thank you. Physiology of hearing. Physiology of hearing it explains various mechanisms behind the hearing process. It explains the reception of the sound waves by various parts of the ear and perception of various properties of the sound at the higher cortex. Physiology of hearing it includes sound waves and their properties, conduction of the sound waves from external and the middle ear into the internal part of the ear, transduction of the sound energy in organ of Corti through various receptor cells, hair cells, neural transmission of the signals through the auditory pathway, and central processing of signals in auditory cortex. So let us begin with the sound waves and their properties. Stimuli for receptor of hearing are sound waves. Sound is form of energy which is produced by vibrating object. Sound wave consists of alternating phases of compression and rarefaction of molecules in medium in which it travels. Speed of sound waves in the air at sea level. It travels at the rate of the 330 meter per second at 0 degree centigrade. With the increase in the temperature up to 20 degrees centigrade, the velocity of sound wave increases up to 340 meter per second. Now the speed of the sound is more in water in comparison to air. In the water, sound wave travel at the speed of 1450 to 1500 meter per second. Even in the water, sound travels at much faster speed in salt water in comparison to fresh water. With increase in the temperature and altitude, sound velocity increases. Amplitude or intensity of sound. Amplitude is the strength which determines the loudness of sound. Intensity of sound is measured in terms of the maximum pressure change at the level of the tympanic membrane, which is commonly expressed in terms of the sound pressure level. The unit of intensity is Bell. Bell is equal to log of intensity of given sound divided by intensity of reference sound. Now the intensity of sound is directly proportional to the square of sound pressure. That's why Bell is equal to 2 log of the pressure of given sound divided by pressure of reference sound. Now what is reference sound? Reference sound, that is just detectable sound, which is also known as auditory threshold, and the reference pressure is 0.0002 dynes per meter square, that is also known as 0 decibel. 1 decibel is equal to 1 divided by 10 bell or zero point 0.1 bell. Amplitude of the reference sound is 0 decibel, and in comparison to the reference sound, the whispering sound has the amplitude of 10 to 30 decibel. In our day-to-day life, normal conversation, they take place at the amplitude of around 40 to 60 decibel. Rock music has the amplitude of 80 to 100 decibel. Now, when the amplitude increases from 100 to 120 decibel, it produces discomfort in the ear, and the amplitude of 120 to 140 decibel, it can produce pain in ear. Frequency of sound waves. These are the number of waves per second. Single frequency sound is called pure tone, and a complex sound is mixture of pure tones. The unit of frequency is hertz. Now in human being, the range of the human hearing is from 20 to 20,000 hertz, but the range of the average speaking voice is usually between 2000 to 5000 hertz. Pitch is subjective sensation which is produced by frequency of the sound waves. In the male voice, usually frequency is 120 Hz. So because of the low frequency, the male voice is low frequency, low pitch sound. And in the female voice, frequency is more than the male voice. It is about 250 Hz. So that's why in the female voice, it is a high frequency, high pitch sound. Single frequency sound is known as pure tone, and a complex sound is a mixture of pure tones. The lowest frequency at which a source vibrates is called fundamental or primary frequency, and multiples of the fundamental frequency are called overtone or harmonics. The overtone determines the quality or the timbre of sound. Variation in the quality or timbre permit us to identify the sound of the various musical instruments even though they are playing notes of the same pitch. Here in this figure we can see the A wave, it is record of a pure tone. B has a greater amplitude and it is louder than A. C has the same amplitude but more frequency and its pitch is higher. D is a complex wave that is regularly repeated. Such patterns they are perceived as musical sound, whereas waves like that is shown in E, which have no regular pattern, are perceived as noise. Auditory receptors, they are present in organ of corti of inner ear. So the conduction of the sound is necessary from the external and middle ear up to inner ear where receptors are present. Role of external ear in the conduction of the sound waves. Pinna. It collects and reflects sound waves to the middle ear, and external auditory canal. It conducts sound waves to the tympanic membrane. Tympanic membrane. It is situated between the external ear and middle ear. Tympanic membrane acts as a pressure receiver. It is extremely sensitive to change in the sound pressure. It starts vibrating with a change in the sound pressure in the external auditory canal, and this vibration ceases with the end of the sound. From the tympanic membrane, this pressure energy it is transmitted to the ear ossicles. Conduction of the sound wave occurs from external ear and middle ear into the inner ear where receptors are situated. External ear and the middle ear they are the air-filled cavities, and inner ear it is filled with fluid. Now whenever sound energy it is transmitted from the air-filled external ear and middle ear into the fluid-filled inner ear, most of the sound energy it is reflected back because of the difference in the mechanical properties of air and fluid. So to prevent this loss of the energy because of the difference in the mechanical properties of the air and fluid, there are specialized mechanisms present in our ear, and they are known as impedance matching mechanism. So this impedance is the resistance and matching mechanism which decreases the resistance which is offered by fluid in the inner ear. And these impedance matching mechanisms they are performed by lever action of ossicle and hydraulic actions of tympanic membrane. First, the lever action of the ossicle. Sound energy from the tympanic membrane it is conducted to three ossicles: malleus, incus, and stapes. Handle of the malleus it is 1.3 times longer than the long process of incus. So when the sound energy it is transmitted from malleus to incus, because of this lever action there is 1.3 times magnification of the sound energy occurs. So that's why it is known as lever action of ossicle. The hydraulic action of the tympanic membrane it is because of the difference in the surface area of the tympanic membrane and the footplate of stapes. Surface area of the tympanic membrane is about 45 mm square, and surface area of the footplate of the stapes is 3.2 mm square. So sound energy it is transmitted from this large surface area of the tympanic membrane to the small surface area of the footplate of the stapes. So sound energy is concentrated from large surface area to the small surface area. So the area ratio is 14:1. So there is 14 time magnification of the sound energy occurs because of this difference in the surface area. So lever ratio is 1.3:1. So there is 1.3 time magnification of the sound energy because of the lever action, and area ratio is 14:1. So there is 14 time magnification because of the difference in the surface area, and this total transformer ratio is equal to 14 multiplied 1.3 is equal to 18:1. So there is total 18 time magnification of the sound energy occurs when it is conducted from tympanic membrane to the footplate of the stapes, and this mechanism is known as impedance matching mechanism. Sound below 60 Hz or above 20,000 Hz, they are not amplified at all, and amplification of the sound intensity is greatest between 1000 to 3000 Hz. This forms the basis of the minimum audibility curve. So the minimum audibility curve is a standardized graph of the threshold of hearing frequency for an average human, and is used as the reference level when measuring hearing loss with an audiometer. Natural resonance of external and middle ear. External and middle ear allow certain frequency of the sound to pass more easily to the inner ear. It is due to anatomical and the physiological properties. and the greatest sensitivity of the sound transmission is between 500 to 3000 Hz. That is the frequency which is used during day to day normal conversation. So the natural resonance of the tympanic membrane is from 800 to 1600 Hz. In the external auditory canal, the natural resonance is 3000 Hz. In the middle ear, 800 Hz, and ossicular chain, it is from 500 to 2000 Hz. So greatest sensitivity is between 500 to 3000 Hz. Middle ear cavity, it contains two muscles, tensor tympani muscle and the stapedius muscle. Tensor tympani muscle, it is attached to the neck of the malleus, and stapedius muscle, it is attached to the foot plate of the stapes. Whenever we are exposed to the sudden loud sound, within 40 to 80 milliseconds of the latent period, there is contraction of the tensor tympani and stapedius muscle occurs. Contraction of the tensor tympani muscle increases tension over the tympanic membrane, and contraction of the stapedius muscle, it moves the foot plate of the stapes away from the oval window. Contraction of the both this muscle increases the rigidness of the ossicular chain, and by this manner it decreases the conduction of the sound waves from the tympanic membrane to the oval window. Thus, the attenuation reflex is a protective reflex, and it decreases damage to the inner ear from loud sound. Now the latent period is 40 to 80 milliseconds. So whenever a sudden explosion occurs because of the bomb explosion, then within this short latent period, this loud sound, it can damage the inner ear. So latent period of the 40 to 80 millisecond is necessary for the development of the attenuation reflex. Now the attenuation reflex, it also attenuates low frequency sounds like the environmental sound, and it also prevents sound of the chewing. Physiology of hearing, it includes properties of sound waves, conduction of the sound wave in human ear, transduction of the sound energy into neural impulse, transmission of the neural impulse to the higher cortex, and central processing of the auditory information. At the end of this session, you have learned about the properties of the sound waves and conduction of the sound energy in our ear. Sound is a form of energy that is produced by the compression and rarefaction of the air molecules. Sound is conducted through the pinna and external auditory canal, and the conduction of the sound wave up to tympanic membrane, it produces vibrations in the tympanic membrane, and this vibration, they are transmitted through the ossicular chain which contains malleus, incus, and stapes. There is 18 time magnification by the impedance matching mechanism which produces vibration of the fluid in the cochlea. So this movement of the fluid or the perilymph in the cochlea, it produces neural impulses, and these neural impulses, they are carried by cochlear division of the vestibulocochlear nerve to the auditory cortex. In the next lecture, I will teach you about the transduction of the auditory impulses and central processing of the auditory information. Thank you. Welcome to our next session, Physiology of Hearing, Part 2. I hope you have enjoyed our last session, in which I have described properties of sound waves, conduction of sound waves. Now this session include information about the transduction of sound wave into neural impulses. So let us begin. Transduction of sound waves. It is the process by which sound energy, it is converted into the neural impulses that can be carried by vestibulocochlear nerve to the higher centers of our brain. Sound waves, they are conducted from the outer environment into the human ear from external auditory meatus to the middle ear. Now in the middle ear, the movement of the tympanic membrane, it produces movement of the three ossicle, malleus, incus and stapes. So the sound energy, it is converted into the mechanical movement of the foot plate of the stapes. Now this foot plate of the stapes, it closes the oval window in the scala vestibuli. Now the inner ear, it contains three parts: scala vestibuli, scala media and scala tympani. Scala vestibuli and scala tympani, it contains perilymph, and scala media, it contains endolymph. So because of the movement of the foot plate of the stapes, it produces movement of the fluid in the scala vestibuli. So this movement of the fluid in the scala vestibuli, it produces movement of the basilar membrane. Now most of this mechanical energy, it is transmitted from the scala vestibuli to the scala tympani, and few amount of the energy it reaches up to the helicotrema. So the transfer of this energy from the scala vestibuli to the scala tympani, it produces vibration in the basilar membrane. Vibration of the basilar membrane, it produces movement of the fluid in the scala media also. In the scala media, organ of Corti is situated. Organ of Corti, it contains various structures like rods of Corti, the tunnel of Corti, and receptor cell, hair cell, outer hair cell, inner hair cell, and various supporting cell. It is situated on the basilar membrane. So because of the movement of the basilar membrane, there is movement of organ of Corti also occur. Now look at the structure of the hair cell. These are the hair cells. Hair cells, they have a body, and on the upper part it contains small finger like processes. Now this upper part of the hair cell, it is always kept in place by a rigid reticular membrane, and these finger like processes, it they are embedded in the tectorial membrane. These finger like processes, they are known as stereocilia, and the longest part, it is known as kinocilium. They are embedded in the tectorial membrane. Tectorial membrane, it is attached to the limbus at the one end, and on the other end it is free, and it is supported by the Hansen cells. Hansen cell, they are the supporting cell. So with the movement of the basilar membrane, there is also the movement of the hair cell occur, but because this embedded processes in the tectorial membrane is free, and hair cells, they are kept in their place by the reticular lamina, there is movement of the upper part of the hair cell or the stereocilia occur. So with the movement of the basilar membrane, stereocilia moves. When basilar membrane, it moves upward, stereocilia, they move away from the limbus, which produces depolarization, and when basilar membrane, it moves downwards, it moves stereocilia towards the limbus, which produces hyperpolarization. So because of this movement of the basilar membrane, it produces depolarization or the hyperpolarization in hair cell, which is transmitted via vestibulocochlear nerve. Here in this figure we can see the structure of hair cell. Hair cell, they have body, and on the upper part it shows finger like processes. The longest process is known as kinocilium, and other processes shorter than this kinocilium, they are known as stereocilia. So this is the kinocilium, and short processes, they are the stereocilia. So along with the movement of the basilar membrane, there is movement of the stereocilia occur, and the kinocilia, they are embedded in the tectorial membrane. So along with the movement of the fluid, stereocilia either they move towards the kinocilium or away from the kinocilium, and this process it produces depolarization or hyperpolarization. To understand more about the depolarization and the hyperpolarization, first we have to understand the electrophysiology of hearing. So first we have to understand the potential of the hair cell and various potential that exist in our inner ear. Electrophysiology of the hearing. It shows two type of the potentials. Potentials which are recorded from the ear under the resting condition and potentials recorded during the stimulation. So during the resting condition, there are two type of the potentials they can be recorded: resting potential of hair cells and endocochlear potential. And during the stimulation of hair cells, cochlear microphonic potential and action potential in auditory nerve they can be recorded. Endocochlear potential. Endocochlear potential is the potential difference between scala media and scala vestibuli and scala tympani. It is because of the difference in the composition of the fluid which is present in the scala media with the fluid which is present in the scala vestibuli and scala tympani. Scala vestibuli and scala tympani it contains perilymph with a composition which is similar to extracellular fluid. So sodium concentration is more and potassium concentration is less. The scala media it contains stria vascularis on its lateral wall, and the stria vascularis has high amount of the sodium potassium ATPase activity as well as unique potassium pump it is present in the stria vascularis. It secretes more amount of the potassium in the endolymph. That's why endolymph has more amount of the potassium. Because of that, the potential difference exists between the scala media and the scala vestibuli and scala tympani, and the plus 80 millivolt of the electrical potential exists between the endolymph and perilymph, and this potential difference is known as endocochlear potential. Resting membrane potential of hair cell is minus 70 millivolt. At the upper part of the hair cell, it contains stereocilia and the kinocilium. They are embedded in the tectorial membrane and the surrounding fluid is endolymph. Potential of the endolymph is plus 80 millivolt, so that's why at the upper part of the hair cell the potential difference between inside of the cell to the outside of the cell is about minus 150 millivolt. Minus 70 millivolt is the resting membrane potential of hair cell and plus 80 millivolt that is the potential of endolymph. So total difference is minus 150 millivolt. So this much amount of the potential difference exists at the upper part of the hair cell. Hair cell contains the intracellular fluid and scala media contains endolymph. The composition of the endolymph and composition of the intracellular fluid they are similar. So the potassium concentration inside the hair cell and potassium concentration inside the endolymph they are also similar, and because of that the hair cell they are very sensitive to even small movement of the stereocilia. So after the understanding about the resting membrane potential of hair cells as well as endocochlear potential in scala media, it is time to understand various electrical potential that can be recorded after excitation of hair cell. First of all, the cochlear microphonic potential. So the gating of the potassium channel it is controlled by the movement of the stereocilia. So between the stereocilia, a T-link protein it is present which is attached to the potassium channels. So when stereocilia it moves towards the kinocilium, it opens up the potassium channels. So because of that, there is increased permeability to potassium and calcium ions, and because of that potassium and calcium gradually enter inside the stereocilia, which produces depolarization, and this can be recorded as cochlear microphonic potential. Now this cochlear microphonic potential, it is similar to generator potential. It shows no latency or refractory period. It do not obey all or none law, and it shows resistance to ischemia and anesthesia. Here we can see the cochlear microphonic potential recorded in the basal tone and the third tone of the cochlea with a different frequency of the sound waves. So the cochlear microphonic potential recorded, they have the same form and the polarity as that of the acoustic stimulus. Here we can see the base of the cochlea, it responds to all frequency of the sounds, and the apex, it responds to only low frequency of the sound. Action potential in auditory nerve. Here we can see hair cells and production of the depolarization and hyperpolarization in hair cells. So short stereocilia, it is connected to the higher stereocilium through the tip link, which regulates opening of the potassium channels. So when a short stereocilia, it moves towards the higher stereocilium, it opens the potassium channel, which increases conductance of the potassium and calcium, which produces depolarization. And when short stereocilia, it moves away from the longer stereocilium, it produces hyperpolarization in hair cells. So when hair cells, they are depolarized, this wave of the depolarization, it opens the calcium channels. So opening of the calcium channel increases conductance of the calcium inside the hair cell, which produces exocytosis of the neurotransmitters, and this neurotransmitter is probably glutamate. This glutamate, it increases sodium permeability in the afferent neuron, which produces action potential in the 8th cranial nerve. So the action potential, it is produced in the cochlear division of the 8th cranial nerve, which is carried by nerve to the higher centers. Action potential in the auditory nerve fiber also show refractory period and obey all or none law. Loudness of the sound, it determines frequency of action potential in single nerve fiber. So with the increase in the loudness, it increases the frequency of the action potential developed in the nerve fiber. In this session, I have described the process of the transduction of the sound waves. So let us revise. Sound is the energy which is produced by vibrating object. It travels from the external environment into the human ear through the auricle pinna and external auditory canal, which produces vibrations of the tympanic membrane. So sound energy, it produces vibration of the tympanic membrane, and along with that movement of the ossicular chain malleus, incus and stapes, and thus the sound energy, it is converted into the mechanical movement of the foot plate of stapes. The movement of the foot plate of the stapes, it produces movement of the fluid inside the cochlea. Cochlea contains three compartments: scala vestibuli, scala media and scala tympani. In the scala media, it contains organ of Corti, which contains auditory receptor, the hair cell. So with the movement of the fluid, it produces movement of the hair cells. The hair cells, they contain stereocilia and the longest process kinocilium. With the movement of the fluid in the scala media, it produces movement of the hair cell towards the longer stereocilia and away from the longer stereocilia. So when hair cell, they move towards the longer stereocilia, It depolarizes the hair cell and increases release of the neurotransmitter glutamate, which produces action potential in vestibulocochlear nerve. And this action potential is carried via auditory nerve to the auditory cortex. In the next session, I will teach you about auditory pathway and important aspects related to it and central processing of neural impulse. Thank you.
Welcome to today's session, Physiology of Hearing, Part 3. In the previous lecture, you have learned about the conduction of the sound waves in human ear and the transduction of the sound energy into the neural impulses. Now, in this lecture, I am going to teach you about the auditory pathway and important features related to it and neural processing of auditory information. So, let us begin with the auditory pathway. Afferents of the cochlear division of the vestibulocochlear nerve. They end in dorsal and ventral cochlear nucleus. Most of the fibers they cross to the contralateral side and ascend in lateral lemniscus. Now some fibers they synapse with ipsilateral and contralateral group of nucleus. They are trapezoid body nucleus and superior olivary nucleus. Now fibers from this ipsilateral and contralateral group of nuclei they ascend in ipsilateral or contralateral lateral lemniscus and end in inferior colliculus. Fibers from the inferior colliculus end in the medial geniculate body. Auditory radiation from the medial geniculate body they end in the auditory cortex. Auditory cortex it is situated in superior part of temporal lobe. Now the important features of auditory pathway. From the medulla onwards, auditory pathway they are bilaterally represented. So the isolated lesion of the auditory cortex it does not produce unilateral deafness, but the central lesions they decreases ability to differentiate various pattern of the sound and inability to localize sound in space. Unilateral deafness most commonly occur due to damage to the cochlear nuclei and more peripheral structures. There is significant descending pathway forming feed forward and feedback loop exist. So from the superior olivary complex, olivocochlear bundle, they descend along with the vestibulocochlear nerve and innervate base of the outer hair cells and they can modify the activity of outer hair cells and they release the hyperpolarizing mediator most probably acetylcholine. Role in brainstem and spiral acoustic reflex. Afferents of the spiral acoustic reflex they are formed by vestibulocochlear nerve and they end in the brainstem where they synapse with the motor nucleus of the seventh cranial nerve. So efferents they are formed by facial nerve and they supply stapedius muscle. So upon stimulation of the ear with a higher frequency sound, it produces contraction of the stapedius muscle and this is known as spiral acoustic reflex. Integration of the visual and auditory information occurs due to interconnection between superior and inferior colliculi. Because of the collateral to the reticular formation and cerebellum auditory pathway, they play a role in general arousal also. Systemic organization of the sound frequency within an auditory structure is called tonotopy. So topographical mapping of frequency is the tonotopic organization. Here we can see the structure of the basilar membrane and various inner hair cells innervated by the afferents of the cochlear nerve. So from the different portions of the basilar membrane, these afferent fibers they carry information up to the cochlear nuclei. And in this cochlear nuclei, this definite sequence of the neuron it is maintained. So it is like the map of the basilar membrane inside the cochlear nuclei and this is known as tonotopic organization. This type of the tonotopic organization it is maintained up to the auditory cortex. In the auditory cortex, here we can see the column of the neurons which responds to particular type of the frequency. These are known as isofrequency columns and they have same characteristic frequency. Now apart from this isofrequency columns, there are other type of the columns they are also present like the summation columns and the suppression columns. Summation columns they responds to input from both the ear and suppression column they responds to input from one ear. In this manner auditory cortex it responds to particular type of the frequency input from both the ear and input from one ear, and in this manner it processes the auditory signals received. Hemispheric specialization. Previously the term dominant hemisphere it was widely used. So it was believed that one hemisphere is dominant in our brain. But now various studies they suggest that each and every hemisphere has their own specialization. For example, area 22 which is concerned with the processing of auditory signals related to speech, it is more active in the left hemisphere, and area 22 on the right side is more concerned with melody, pitch and sound intensity. So we can say various musical abilities they are more developed in the right hemisphere, and the processing of the auditory signal related to speech it is more active on the left hemisphere. So hemispheric specialization is present in our cortical area associated with audition. There exists a great plasticity in our auditory pathway. For example, if person become deaf before language skill developed, viewing sign language activates auditory association area. Musicians, they have larger auditory area and cerebellum than non-musicians. And blind people, they can localize sound source more accurately. So these are the example of plasticity of auditory pathway. So plasticity is modification of the activity by experience. Now let's summarize important features of auditory pathway. So bilateral representation is there in auditory pathway. Descending pathways they are also present from superior olivary nucleus to the outer hair cells which can modify their functions. Because of the collateral to the reticular formation and cerebellum, auditory pathway play a role in general arousal also. Tonotopic organization is present from cochlear nuclei and it is maintained up to the cortex, and in the cortex column of the neurons they are present which processes auditory signals depending on the input from one ear and both the ear, and they respond to the particular frequency and they are known as isofrequency columns. There exists a great plasticity of the auditory pathway. Plasticity is the modification of the function by experience. Now you have learned about the auditory pathway and important features related to it. Now one important question remains. How we can differentiate between the various frequency of the sound, various intensity of the sound that we hear in our everyday life. So now you will learn about the neural processing of the auditory information that includes encoding of frequency, encoding of intensity, as well as localization of sound in space. Encoding of frequency. Human ear can discriminate sound between 60 to 20,000 Hz frequency range, and this encoding occurs in cochlear nerve. It can be explained by duplex theory of the hearing, which involves place and traveling wave theory by George von Bekesi. For this theory, he won Nobel Prize. And the second theory is the phase locking and Wolay principle. Now, first of all, the place and traveling wave theory by von Bekesi. So von Bekesi determined that the movement of the endolymph makes the basilar membrane bend near its base, starting a wave that propagates gradually towards apex. So movement of the endolymph it produces movement of the basilar membrane, where a traveling wave it propagates from base to apex. Now this movement of the basilar membrane, it depends on its structural characteristics. Here we can see the structure of the cochlea. This is the base of the cochlea and this is the apex of the cochlea. Here we can see two windows. This is the oval window which is closed by foot plate of the stapes, and this is round window which is closed by secondary tympanic membrane. Now cochlea, it is wider at the base and gradually it tapers at the apex. But look at the basilar membrane. Basilar membrane is more narrow at the base and it is more wider at the apex. Now at the base, basilar membrane, it contains more stiff fibers, and at the apical part these fibers are less stiff. So at the base, basilar membrane is narrow and it contains more stiff fibers, and at the apex, basilar membrane is wide and it contains less stiff fiber or loose fiber. So because of this difference in the structural characteristics of the basilar membrane, it responds to different frequency of the sound differently. Now here we can see the structure of the basilar membrane and its response to high frequency and low frequency sounds. Because the base of the basilar membrane, it contains more stiff fibers and it is narrow, so it responds more to high frequency sounds, and gradually the energy of the sound is dissipated and it cannot reach up to the apex. Low frequency sound, they produce more displacement of the basilar membrane and the vibration near the apex because of the wider basilar membrane and less stiff fibers. So high frequency sound, they produce vibration near the base, and low frequency sound, they produces vibration of the basilar membrane near the apex. So the base of the basilar membrane is tuned for high frequency and apex, it is tuned for low frequency. So we can say that the basilar membrane is mechanical analyzer of sound frequency, and the pattern of the movement of the basilar membrane is that of the traveling wave, and that's why this theory is known as traveling wave theory. And with this theory we can explain the discrimination of the sound between 2000 to 20,000 Hertz. Now let us summarize the traveling wave theory or place principle. So this is the structure of the cochlea. This is the base of the cochlea and this is the apical part. Now in this cross section we can see the scala media which contains organ of Corti. Now this is the basilar membrane. So with the movement of the basilar membrane, there is movement of the organ of Corti occurs. Now look at the structure of the basilar membrane. Near the base, basilar membrane is narrow and it is more wide at the apex. And base contains more stiff fibers and apex contains loose fibers. Here we can see the movement of the ossicles, they are transmitted in the endolymph which produces movement of the basilar membrane. So high frequency sounds, they produces movement of the basilar membrane near the base, and low frequency sound, they produces vibration of the basilar membrane near the apex. So this movement of the basilar membrane, it depends on the different frequency of the sounds. So base is responds to high frequency and apex it responds to low frequency. Now listen all the sounds in this second video. So at the apex it responds to high frequency sounds. and bass it responds to low frequency sounds. So depending on the vibration of the basilar membrane, it produces stimulation of the hair cells, and these impulses they are carried via cochlear division of the vestibulocochlear nerve, and in this manner it informs to the higher cortex about the frequencies which are present in the sound. Von Beck's traveling wave theory it explains discrimination of the sound waves from 2000 to 20,000 Hz, but it cannot explain the discrimination of the frequency below 2000 Hz. Wolle's principle it can explain the discrimination of the low frequency sound below 2000 Hz. So for very low frequency sound, there is synchronization is present between the frequency of the sound and rate of discharge through the cochlear nerve. Here we can see the frequency of sound wave and its synchronization is present with the rate of the discharge through the cochlear nerve. So for example, 200 burst of the neural activity for 200 Hz signal. So for the all the low frequency sound below 2000 Hz, there is synchronization is present between the frequency of the sound and rate of discharge, and in this manner it informs to brain about the frequency of the sound which is present. Encoding of intensity. Intensity is the loudness. So increase in the intensity increase is the displacement of the basilar membrane. More displacement of the basilar membrane increases the frequency of the firing in the auditory nerve fiber. Here we can see the sound wave with a similar frequency but with increase in the intensity. Here we can see the rate of discharge, and with the increase in the intensity, frequency of the firing in the action potential in auditory nerve increases. In this manner, it provides information to our auditory cortex about the intensity of sound that we hear. Localization of sound in space. A person determines the horizontal direction from which sound comes by two principal means. For sound less than 3000 Hz frequency, the time lag between the entry of the sound in one ear and its entry into the opposite ear by medial superior olivary nucleus. So when sound source it lies near the left side of the head, the sound wave first enters inside the left ear, then they enter in the right ear. So the sound from the left ear first it is processed into the auditory signals, and then they are perceived by the cortex, and then signals from the right ear they are processed in the auditory signals, and then they are perceived by the brain. So there is a time lag is present between the signals from the right ear and signals from the left ear. So because the auditory signals from the left ear they reaches the auditory cortex first, so our brain perceives that the sound source it lies near the left side of the head. For high frequency sounds, the difference between the intensity of the sound in the two ear by the lateral superior olivary nucleus it provides information about the localization of the sound in space. So at the end of this session, you have learned about the auditory pathway and important features related to it, and neural processing of auditory information that includes encoding of frequency, encoding of intensity, and localization of sound in space. In next lecture, I will teach you about applied aspects of hearing. Thank you. Welcome to the next lecture. In previous lecture, you have learned about the process of the conduction, process of the transduction. You have learned about the auditory pathway and its important features and the processing of the auditory information. So after learning about the physiology of the hearing, now I am going to explain various applied aspects of sense of hearing. Periodic complex sound is music and aperiodic complex sound is noise. There are three types of the noise: white noise, narrowband noise and speech noise. White noise contains all the frequency in audible spectrum, and narrowband noise It contains some of the frequency filtered out from the white noise. And this narrow band noise it is useful to mask test frequency in pure tone audiometry. Speech noise is the noise with frequency in speech range between 300 to 3000 Hz. Presence of one type of the sound decreases the ability of the ear to hear another type of the sound, and this is known as masking. So it is because of the inability of the auditory mechanism to separate simultaneous stimulation of the separate components. So it is a common experience that in noisy surrounding it is difficult to hear the words of the conversation. It is because of the masking effect of the noisy surrounding. Impairment of hearing is known as hearing loss. Hearing loss is expressed as difference in the hearing threshold of patient with the normal subject, and deafness is little or no hearing at all. Here we can see the classification of hearing loss by WHO. So degree of the hearing loss from 0 to 6 and hearing threshold in the better ear of the patient with the average of the 500, 1000 and 2000 Hz frequency. So not significant or the normal is up to 0 to 25 decibel of the change in the hearing threshold. Mild is change in the hearing threshold from 26 to 40 decibel. Severe is the change in the hearing threshold from 71 to 91 decibel. And the profound is the change in the hearing threshold more than 91 decibel. To understand more clearly, for example, in the patient with the profound hearing loss, the change in the hearing threshold is more than 91 decibel. So he requires increase in the intensity of the sound more than 91 decibel than the person with the normal hearing. Hearing loss is of various types: conductive type of the hearing loss, sensory neural hearing loss, and the mixed type of the hearing loss. Now, first of all, conductive type of the hearing loss. As the name suggests, this is the defect in the conduction of the sound from the external environment up to the internal ear where receptors are situated. So, any defect in the external auditory canal, damage to the tympanic membrane, damage to the middle ear cavity, ear ossicles, or any pathology that affects this conduction of the sound can produce conductive type of the hearing loss. So various causes of the conductive type of the hearing loss, they are presence of the wax, lodging of the foreign body in the external auditory canal, it decreases the conduction of the sound; damage to the tympanic membrane, which produces perforation of the tympanic membrane in the middle ear; infection, which is known as otitis media. So the presence of the fluid in the middle ear cavity, it decreases conduction through the ear ossicle up to the internal ear. Disruption of the ear ossicles as well as the fixation of the foot plate of stapes, which is also known as otosclerosis. It decreases the conduction in the cochlea. Eustachian tube obstruction also decreases the pressure inside the middle ear cavity, which can affect the conduction of the sound from tympanic membrane up to internal ear. So all the causes that affects the conduction of sound from external auditory canal up to internal ear, they all produce conductive type of hearing loss. Characteristic features of conductive type of the hearing loss. Here in this figure we can see the conduction pathways through which sound energy it is transmitted to the internal ear. So there are two pathways. First is the air conduction and second is the bone conduction. Air conduction is the conduction of the sound through the external auditory canal and through three ear ossicles inside the middle ear cavity. Sound is magnified up to 18 times, then it is transmitted to the cochlea. Second is the bone conduction, that is directly conduction of the sound from the bone to the cochlea. Normally, air conduction it is more than bone conduction. Now about the characteristic feature of the patient with the conductive type of the hearing loss. The pathology involves the conduction of the sound in the external auditory canal and in the middle ear cavity. So because of that, air conduction decreases. So in the patient with the conductive type of the hearing loss, air conduction is less, but the bone conduction is normal. So relatively, bone conduction it is more than air conduction in the patient with the conductive type of the hearing loss. Sensory neural type of the hearing loss, it occurs because of the damage to the cochlea, organ of Corti, inner hair cell, outer hair cell, and all the lesions involving 8th cranial nerve. Most common causes they are congenital anomalies of cochlea, infections of labyrinth, acoustic trauma or exposure to the loud sounds, various ototoxic drugs like streptomycin, neomycin, furosemide, they can also produce degeneration of inner and outer hair cells, various neoplasm and systemic disorders like diabetes, mellitus and hypertension, they can produce sensory neural type of the hearing loss. Characteristic features of sensory neural hearing loss. Now in the sensory neural hearing loss, the pathology or the abnormality it lies at the level of the cochlea and the above, which includes damage to the hair cells and damage to the vestibulocochlear nerve. So hearing loss is complete, speech discrimination is poor, and hearing loss is usually more than 60 decibel. Because the abnormality it lies at the level of the cochlea and above, because of that bone conduction and air conduction both decreases. Various investigations are useful to diagnose patient with hearing loss and to differentiate between the pathologies involved behind the hearing loss. Now I am going to explain all this investigation one by one. Rinne's test. Rinne's test is useful to compare air conduction and bone conduction of a patient. For this purpose, tuning fork is used. Usually, the tuning fork with a frequency of 256 Hz and 512 Hz they are used. After vibrating the tuning fork, it is placed in front of the ear to measure air conduction of the patient. Then it is placed on the mastoid process of the patient to measure bone conduction. In the normal subject, air conduction it is always more than bone conduction and this is interpreted as Rinne's test is positive. So Rinne's test is always positive in the normal person. In the person with the conductive type of the hearing loss, bone conduction is more than air conduction because air conduction decreases and in comparison to air conduction, bone conduction is more and this is interpreted as Rinne's test is negative. In the patients with sensory neural type of the hearing loss, because the defect lies at the level of the cochlea and above, both air conduction and bone conduction decreases. Weber's test. Weber's test is particularly useful for the bone conduction. After vibrating the tuning fork, it is placed to midline forehead, then conduction to the ear it is observed. So normally conduction to the both ear is present through the bone. But in the patient with the conductive type of the hearing loss, towards the affected ear conduction is more than the opposite ear. And in the sensory neural type of the hearing loss, lateralization to the normal ear is present because of the pathology of the opposite ear, both the air conduction and bone conduction decreases. Squeback's test. It compares patient's hearing sensitivity with examiner. First of all, the tuning fork is set into vibration. The stem is placed on the mastoid process of the patient and then on the mastoid process of the examiner. Patient should indicate whether the tone is heard or not. When patient no longer hears tone, examiner immediately places the stem behind his own ear. He compares the bone conduction of the patient with the bone conduction of his own. In the patients with a conductive type of the deafness, the bone conduction is more in the patient in comparison to the examiner because of the absence of the masking effect in the patient. And in the normal person, bone conduction of the patient is similar with the bone conduction of the examiner. Tuning fork tests and their interpretation. So in the normal person, air conduction is more than bone conduction and it is known as Rinne's positive test. In the Weber's test, there is no lateralization and both the ear they perceive sound simultaneously. And in the Quebec test, bone conduction of the patient as well as the bone conduction of the examiner they are equal. Now in the patient with the conductive type of the hearing loss, bone conduction is more than air conduction. So Rinne's test is negative and in the Weber's test, lateralization of the sound towards the affected ear because of the more conduction on the affected side. In the Quebec test, better conduction is present in the patient because of the absence of the masking of the environmental sound due to pathology of the external auditory canal or pathology of the middle ear. So masking is not present, so bone conduction is more in the patient. In the sensory neural type of the hearing loss, air conduction is more than bone conduction in the partial deafness because the damage lies at the level of the cochlea as well as in the vestibulocochlear nerve. So both air conduction as well as the bone conduction both decreases, but air conduction is more than bone conduction in the partial deafness. And in the Weber's test, lateralized sound towards the healthy ear because in the affected ear there is decrease in the both air conduction as well as the bone conduction, so there is lateralization of the sound toward the healthy ear occurs. In the Quebec test, better conduction is present in the examiner because in the patient both air conduction as well as the bone conduction decreases. Measurement of the auditory acuity using audiometer is known as audiometry. Audiometer contains electronic oscillator which can generate pure tones. Intensity dial, it can adjust threshold of intensity. Headphone delivers pure tone of the various frequency to each ear separately. It is usually performed in the soundproof room. Mechanical vibrator is used to measure bone conduction. Air conduction and bone conduction, they are measured for various frequencies. In the normal person, air conduction and bone conduction, they are both at the 0 decibel and there is no airborne gap is present. Now look at this audiogram. Here we can see the recording of the frequency as well as the recording of the intensity and recording of the air conduction and bone conduction of the patient. Now this audiogram shows decrease in the air conduction and bone conduction both at the higher frequencies. So this is the example of the sensory neural type of the hearing loss. And this type of the hearing loss particularly to the high frequency occurs in the old age people and this is known as presbyacosis. The cause of the presbyacosis is age-related degeneration of inner hair cell and degeneration of neurons. Hearing loss to the low frequency occurs most commonly on the exposure to the low frequency loud sounds for a longer duration of the time, and hearing loss to all frequency occurs due to ototoxicity of various drugs like streptomycin, gentamicin, kanamycin and chloramphenicol. Now this is the audiogram of the patient with the middle ear sclerosis. Here we can see the recording of the air conduction as well as the bone conduction. Bone conduction of the patient is normal. but the air conduction of the patient is significantly decreased, and the gap between the bone conduction and air conduction is present. This is known as AB gap. So in this patient, bone conduction is more than air conduction. So this is the conductive type of the hearing loss. Otosclerosis is caused by fibrosis in the middle ear after repeated infection, or fibrosis that occur in the hereditary disease called otosclerosis. In this type of the person, bone conduction is essentially normal and conduction through the ossicular system is greatly depressed. Brainstem auditory evoke responses. These are the evoke potential recorded from the surface of the scalp on response to the auditory stimuli. So first of all, auditory stimuli is given and electrical potential at the surface of the scalp they are recorded. This is useful for the assessment of the hearing loss in infants and in small children, and to localize brainstem lesion and diagnosing tumor at various points of auditory pathway. Here we can see the record of brainstem auditory evoke responses. So typical record, it shows total 7 waves and they represent activity at the different points in the auditory pathway. So after the auditory stimulation, when the sound wave passes through the different portions of the auditory pathway, it produces different electrical activity. Wave 1 and wave 2, they represent the activity at the level of the auditory nerve. Wave 3, it represents electrical activity at the level of the cochlear nucleus. Wave 4, it represents activity at the level of the superior olivary complex. Wave 5, at the level of the lateral lemniscus. Wave 6 and wave 7, they represent electrical activity at the level of the inferior colliculus. So this is the normal recording of the brainstem auditory evoke responses, and any alteration in the electrical activity, it shows damage at the different point of the auditory pathway and in the brainstem. Management of patient with hearing loss. It depends on type of the hearing loss and pathology involved behind the hearing loss. Here I am not going to explain detail about the management of the hearing loss, but I am just going to give you brief information on hearing aids and cochlear implant. Hearing aids. A hearing aid is a device to amplify sound reaching the ear. Essentially it consists of three parts: microphone, amplifier, and receiver. Microphone receives sound waves, amplifier amplifies the sound energy, and receiver, it transmits these sound waves up to the cochlea. So the hearing aid, it receives sound waves, amplifies sound waves, and transmit these sound waves up to the cochlea. Various type of the hearing devices they are available, like bone conduction hearing device, air conduction hearing device. So this type of the hearing aids, they can be prescribed depending on the need of the patient and pathology involved behind the hearing loss. In the patients with the damage to the cochlea and damage to the inner hair cells, hearing aids, they are of not much help. In this type of the patient with severe to profound hearing loss, cochlear implants, they are useful. Here we can see the cochlear implant with its external component and the internal components. External component act as a speech processor and transmit the sound waves to the internal component. Internal component converts the sound energy into the electrical signals, and then it produces stimulation of the array of electrodes which are situated inside the cochlea. This array of electrodes, they produces stimulation of the afferents of the cochlear nerve, which is perceived as sound in our brain.